Glad to have you here for our, I have to stop and think what month it is, May, our May Seniors Living Smarter seminar, our real estate update and essential tips for selling your home. I've had some people this morning already say, I'm not selling my home, but I thought I'd come anyway. Well, we're glad you did come, and you never know. What are we about? We're about being prepared and having information. So whether or not you're going to use the information in the next year or two or somewhere, or your friend might benefit from the information that you can share. So we're glad to have you here. I'm Virginia Lazenby, founder and host of the seminars. And those of you who have been attending our seminars know we're growing and changing, and it's terrific. And Vince Burgess, who's my new partner with the real estate, he's our Chief Operations Officer. He's going to keep us all organized and all. That's a challenge, but I think those are our announcements for today. Vince will fill you in some more. Oh, let me emphasize the packets. Could you hand me a packet? For new people, remember you get your binder, and then each month you get your packet, color-coordinated divider page, and then in here will be your handouts that can go into your binder. And they're great resources. You know, one of the things, and Vince will talk more about this too, is we really want it to be more than just come and hear and get information and walk out the door and forget about it. We really encourage you to, wherever you are in the process, perhaps someday moving, but knowing about the real estate market, tips for selling your home. We don't just wait until we're ready to sell our home. We want to share some things today that you can plan ahead on. But your handout is in here, and there's also at the very first page in there your action steps that we encourage you to be thinking about. You know, if you're considering a move, plan ahead and assess your home from a buyer's perspective. You'll hear more about that today. In fact, I think we'll save the rest of those tips and go through, and maybe at the end they'll make a little more sense. We're also going to be talking about wonderful interest rates and loan possibilities to help you. So you'll get a lot of information today. But also then on the back, you have your little green half sheet, our feedback form. We encourage you to fill that out. And, you know, let us know, what is it you're taking away today? See if we can follow up and help you and support you in that. So Vince will talk more about that too. But just wanted to let you know, so our usual format, we'll have the panel, and then we will do some housekeeping, and then open it up for questions and answers. Did I get all that done? Thank you.
Virginia has a muted mic now, so we'll work with her in a second. Welcome, everyone. Glad to see everyone here this morning. And as Virginia mentioned, today's seminar is going to be kind of in three sections. We'll do a high-level overview and a kind of a 10,000-foot view of real estate market and the trends right now. We'll also talk with Lori about interest rates and those types of issues. And she was just at a training yesterday, so she's got lots of information she wants to share with us. The Fed met yesterday, so there's been some changes there. And then we will speak with Virginia about essential tips for selling your home. So although it's going to be three separate kind of sections, we'll try to weave it together a little bit, and then we'll have a time for Q&A at the end. So there is, on this sheet here, there's space for notes. And so, write your questions down. And then also, when we get to Virginia's part, there's another page in here on the essential tips section, so you can make sure you take notes if you'd like. So, alrighty. So let's start. We'll take a high-level view of Williamson County, and then we'll go to Georgetown. And then while not everyone here lives in Sun City, we'll drill down to Sun City. But if you have any questions about any of this information on your particular neighborhood, or if you don't live in Georgetown, reach out to us because we have this information available that we can drill down as specific as you would like. So let's go back. Okay. This first slide here shows us that from March of last year, so all the data is not in to give us really solid April numbers, so we're using March. And it looks like for Williamson County, you saw I didn't touch it. Let's do this one more time. We'll go back to no. I'm going to put that right there and not touch it. So from March of last year, the median price is just about 1% lower than it was a year ago. So there's not been much change in terms of price. And just below that, look at that. That's active listings have gone up about 35% from last year. So that means there are 35% more homes on the market in Williamson County than there were a year ago. And if you just go straight down from there, days on market, about the same, only about 5 days more. Now, I think in your packet, I just put the Georgetown paper. Again, reach out to me. I can get you all this information on Williamson County or your specific neighborhood. I'd love to do that. On the right-hand column in the middle, close price is down about 4, almost 5%, and then months of inventory is 3.8. Now, months of inventory is significant for a couple of reasons. Well, one main reason, it helps us identify if a market is a buyer's market or a seller's market. And what that 3.8 months of inventory means, if there were no new homes coming on the market and the current homes that are right now, it would take about 3.8 months for all those homes to sell, given the current pace of homes being sold. So a balanced market is about 6 months of inventory. That means you've got some good negotiations on each side. Typically, under 6 months is a seller's market, and over 6 months is a buyer's market. When you think about that, if you've got 8 or 9 months of inventory, that's a glut of homes on the market that a buyer can really have their choice and kind of negotiate. So we're about 3.8 months countywide, but it's going to be interesting when we drill this same information. We're going to drill down to Georgetown and then drill down to Sun City. And again, if you don't live in Sun City, reach out if you want more information. Let's go to Georgetown. So it looks like the median price in Georgetown is down about 7% from last year. Look at the number of active listings for Georgetown. So up 60%. Look at that, 59.5%. That's pretty significant from a year ago. And then down below that, 24 days less on the market than last year. On the right-hand side, middle of the page for Georgetown, there it is, 23.9%. Decrease in closed sales, and again, we have a little bit more inventory, so 4.2 months. And then Sun City, back to, let's do Sun City. There we go. We're going to park it here for just a few minutes. So Sun City, you've seen, that community has seen a 15% decrease in median price from a year ago. But look at the number of listings that you have. So almost 73% more listings than a year ago. And then closed sales, 5.4% less, and then 4 months of inventory. So we're kind of throwing some numbers at you, but if and when you ever go to sell your home, this is the sort of information that's going to be very helpful when we look at how long a home is sitting on the market. What can you expect in terms of, you slap a price on a home and say, I want it sold in 30 days. Well, let's look at the market. The market, the average days on market is 44, and then you have another 34 days to close. That's an average sort of escrow time. So currently right now, the average is about 78 days from the time you put a house on the market to the time it closes. And there are many variables in that, right? It depends on the floor plan you have. It depends on what price you put on your home. Virginia and I work with people all the time who say, I want top dollar. And, well, we need to look at some of these essential tips that Virginia's going to share with us later about your curb appeal, about, does your home need major upgrades? What's the condition of the roof or the furnace or the AC? So all these kind of things will impact price. And can you take us to that next slide? For the data geeks in the room, and the people who love numbers and graphs, this next slide is a lot of information, but it's good stuff. And so you can see here, and this is Georgetown again, and it's just another kind of representation from the other slide that we showed you. I'm going to put my glasses on here. So again, closed sales for March of 25 in Georgetown now. This is overall Georgetown. 102 sales, and that was down 20-some%. Average the median price is $394. Months of inventory 4.2. But look at what happened. As you can see in 2020, 21, 22, we had this spike in terms of the growth trend, and we really called those the unicorn years. People have said, well, the market is it's crashing, or really it's correcting itself. There was a time in that 20, 21, 22 that, and Virginia and Lori, I'm sure, have their own stories when you could barely put a sign in the yard and you were getting multiple offers. I had some that they waived the right. The buyer didn't want an inspection. They offered $50,000 over asking price, and it was a loony time. And people said, "Oh, it just wasn't that fun," because especially when you're helping buyers, people were getting priced out. So what we're really seeing now is still a course correction. We have a new administration. We have some work that the Fed has been doing to rein in inflation and those types of things. So all of this is having an impact. I was looking at a graph the other day about interest rates, and again, Lori will talk about this. We've had a slew of millennials coming into the market over the past several years, and all they've known, think about this, all they've known is interest rates in the 4% range, and they got down to 3%, and some of you in the room may have refinanced for 2.75%, and that's a really, really low interest rate that we may never see in our lifetime again. I remember my father-in-law worked at the Pentagon in the mid to late 80s, and they bought a home, I think, in Allendale, and I want to say interest rate was 12, 14, 18%, something like jaw-dropping that we couldn't really fathom now. So when you look at a 40, 50-year span of interest rates, 6.5%, isn't that bad, right? I remember back in 2002, my wife and I bought a new home, and I think we got a 6.5% interest rate. And I thought I had died and gone to heaven. That was so great. And now it's really causing a mild disruption in the market. 2024 was a really tough year for a lot of people, and a lot of buyers are sitting on the fence on what should I do, what should I sell, or should I buy or not. But I want to write down any questions that you have. Again, really high level, and I think it was helpful to give you the county, city, and then a neighborhood. But if you have questions, we'll take those at the end. But in terms of interest rates, Lori, what are we predicting for the rest of the year, and what are people saying?
Thank you, Vince. Lori Anderson. I'm Lori Anderson. I have lived in Georgetown for 30 years, raised my boys here. So the other half of my life was in Dallas. And I have worked at multiple banks. I have worked at some big box banks. I was a lender there. I've worked at First Texas Bank for 8 years, and I've done mortgages for done mortgages for 25 years, did them partly at the bank, and now I'm working with a mortgage lender, and I love that because it gives me more freedom. So I'm a banker by trade. I worked at a credit union back in my 20s, so I hope that maybe we can hopefully give you enough education of some of that, and I really hope that some of the stuff that we share is knowledge and education. I kind of want to comment a little bit about COVID and kind of with that, because when people do look at interest rates, you can take historically over times, and I can remember in my 20s, I worked at a savings and loan, and people would come in and renew their CDs, and I would type that CD on a calculator, a typewriter, and they would bring their certificate of deposit in, and to renew it, I'd type them and give them a new one. And I can remember coming off of some of those rates and typing it, and they were getting high rates down into the lows and some things like that. So think about it. COVID is a situation where it affected us astronomically. The way we think, the way we order groceries, the way we drive, everything. And I think it scared a lot of, and this is an opinion, it scared a lot of, political, and they didn't know what to do. And now Fed and certain people in certain high-level made decisions, and now exactly what Vince said, we're trying to correct ourselves back and get into more of a normal market. And I think that sometimes it just took longer for some things to correct over others. Mm-hmm. So, and again, there are 6 major things that affect interest rates, and one of them is the tariffs and the global markets and the volatility that comes in. That's one of the 6 things that's when I went and have done, talked to somebody about it, it's the COVID events, it's the tariffs, it's some of that. And some of what we're seeing is somewhat normal, but again, I just want y'all to know that COVID, yes, I've got a good interest rate. We all have a good interest rate if you do have a loan on there, but it does take a little bit. And I think it also kind of comes back to our mindset of thinking like, okay, what is right, what's normal, and don't get caught up in what everybody's saying. Think about what's right for you and what is good for you and what your needs are when you're trying to make financial decisions. Sorry, when you talk about COVID, I think of that and think of us, because it's 2025, and that was 2020. It's still 5 years later affecting us.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, very, very, very true. So where do we see interest rates heading this year?
Well, and I've got some notes here because the Fed did meet yesterday, and I'm just going to read some of their announcements that they made yesterday afternoon. The Fed Reserve meets 8 times a year, and they control the Fed funds rate, which is the rate that banks lend to each other and to the Federal Reserve. And it's currently just going to stay as is, and it's going to be 4.25 to 4.5. Now, that's just a basis of rates that banks lend to each other. That's not the mortgage rates. But basically, they just decided to just and I'm reading it, to just remain unchanged. So maybe we might see one more Fed funds rate cut before the end of the year, but Jerome Powell emphasized we're just going to see a wait-and-see approach. Let's just see what happens. The full impact of some of these trade tensions have yet to be materialized.
Yes.
Sorry.
Let's all say that together.
Yeah.
Materialize.
Yes,
that's good.
And so they're just going to wait and see what happens. So what we've seen is from COVID, we were very, very low. And then I think the Fed was a little bit delayed in making some of those cuts or some of the increases and some of the changes they've made over the years. And so at first, when we came kind of off of COVID and rates started going up, we heard, they're going to make 2 or 3 cuts, this year and whatever. And I think and it's probably what you see in the real estate market. we keep thinking, oh, it's gonna be one more year, and I just really think it's gonna take us a little while more to recover. And so you know, 2 or 3 years ago, we heard, oh, they're gonna get down into the fives, you know, the 4 or the 5s, and I just think people just did not realize what it's gonna take to recover from that. So right now, they're depending on whether you wanna buy a point or not buy a point, they're in the 6s to 7s. Last week, we had a jump that jumped it up, and they're now back corrected again. So I would say, you know, they're going to remain probably unchanged for the year.
So 6.5%.
6.5,
probably,
maybe just
most
depending
likely.
on the points and what you want to buy.
Okay, great, thank you. So another question that I had, let's say I want to sell my house and I don't have a mortgage on it, but there's been some deferred maintenance on my house. And in order for me to really want to get the most, I might need a new roof, or my primary master bathroom is really outdated and I need some money or cash to kind of, you know, what are the options for that? And talk to us about reverse mortgages, and do they get a bad rap still, or what? Tell me about that.
Like I told you guys, when I, you know, got married and started my family, I jumped right into banking, and it just fits me. So hopefully some of the advice that I can give you is just advice that's going to be from a wide range of experience. And so what I tell people is, yes, reverse mortgages kind of have, you know, there's a history there, but you have to also do a little bit of research. And what I want to do is and this is what I tell all of the people that I talk to, family, friends, let's take a step back first before you really think, oh, I need to fix this, I need to do that. Think about all the things that you have control, that are yours. Your credit report. Everybody needs to be checking their credit report every year or every 2 years. Everybody needs to go back to their homeowners insurance policies, make sure they're insured. Your health, you need to go back and know where your health records are, your wills, all of those things you need to touch on an annual, semi-basis, depending on whatever your need is. So I tell people, and when I deal with first-time home buyers, it's a lot of credit, a lot of things, but you guys will find, and Virginia's known me a long time, a lot of my clients are 45 and above. I don't know what it is. I just gravitate to those products and a lot of those things. So what I tell, you know, people that are in that age group is you need to get an equity assessment. You need to know what is going on with your situation and know what's going on with you. And you do that by reaching out to a real estate agent and once a year, and we are in Virginia, we'll talk about this, we've got just a few more days left to be able to protest those values on those houses. So know what your taxes are, what you're paying on that. So what I say is meet with somebody, whether you need a loan or not. Know what you have, what your home value is, what it was last year, what you think it is for your market. If you do have a mortgage loan on your house, know what that interest rate is and have somebody do an annual assessment of that, because there are multiple things you can do to fix those things in the house. What my fear is, I'm 59, is I don't want to outlive my money and I don't want to be a burden to my kids. So what do I have to help me? I have money coming in, and I have my house, my savings, my pensions, and you need to kind of do an assessment, and doing an equity assessment will help with that. Now, leading on to that, what I will say is there are home equity loans, there are HELOCs, there are the fixed rates where they just give you the cash out, and you have to make a payment with those. And when you make a payment on a fixed budget, there are things that you have to have on top of your housing costs, your normal insurance, home taxes, HOA, those type of things. But I do want people to open their eyes and their ears of a reverse mortgage too. And my mom had one, I didn't understand it. But what I'll tell people is, I met with somebody just yesterday. I met with her, she's in Sun City, she's gonna sell her house. She lost her husband. And we talked about door number 1, door number 2, like what are your options? Your options are to pay cash, your options are to do a forward mortgage, your options are to do a reverse mortgage, or your options are to do this. And we walked through the options, and so what I find with that is when you visit with somebody you trust and you get those information and you get the information that's right for you, you sit on it, you think about it, then you can go back. If you do talk to your family and friends, just realize that they're not you and they're not in your situation. And so I just tell people, be open and honest and think about what you need. And if somebody says, oh, that's not right, you don't need to do a HELOC. Well, you need to think about it and know what's right for you. And I've been known to refer them out because that is a better option for them. So we all up here on this panel truly want to do what's right for you.
Yeah. So many things she said were amazing. I just want to tell you that. You know, find someone that a provider that you trust that goes over options with you. Be wary if someone says, this is the absolute way to do it, you have to do it this way, like, ooh, you know, kind of lean back a little bit. So, but find people that give you the option to, and kind of walk through that with you. That's such
It's
a
an
great
educational mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yes, Virginia.
So are you going to explain a little bit more about the pros and cons?
Yeah, pros and cons of a reverse
A
mortgage.
reverse.
Yeah.
A reverse is a loan like any other loan. So I've got a forward loan on my house now, but I'm making payments. I probably will convert that to a reverse mortgage when I get to 62, continue to make payments. So it's a loan like any other loan. You just do not have to make a payment. You're not required to make a payment, and you're kind of deferring the payment of that till you sell the home or you move out of the home. So in other words, what you're doing is using the equity while you're alive. Instead of, we're taught that home is to be paid off and you can't touch the equity. So what does that do? Your kids or your estate gets that cash. And it's pulling it into your financial picture to use it while you're alive. And it has become more and more, it is safe. There's been major changes. So a lot of the negativity, this was signed into law with Reagan. That's 35 years ago. I've got a kid that was born that year that he signed it. And so there have been major changes to make it safe. VA, FHA, they're all government-regulated programs. This is too. It's just designed and it's in law to help a senior age in place. And it's an option. It's not the only option, but it's an option to consider. And you have to listen to and I've done it for so many years that, again, I do forward mortgage, I do construction. It's just an option that you need to think about because this is something that I truly believe with my heart. If I have a mortgage right now, and if I don't pay it, and if I have a major catastrophe, my husband, like major catastrophe, and we don't have any money coming in, 4 months they can kick me out of my house because I haven't made a payment. They'll start foreclosure proceedings. A reverse mortgage adds protections to the senior. It adds protections to help them age in place. I can explain that later. And again, it's not an option for everybody, but it is a safe option to think about. But again, there's HELOCs, there's credit unions out there that there's things that I can't beat and match. You just have to do the research and listen to a trusted somebody and know what's right for you. Because all these other loans have payments, and if you can handle that, great. If you need to, there's tons of ways you can fix things. You just need to find what's right for you.
So good, so good. Yeah, that was great. So I had another question, and both of you can answer here. When you talk about equity in your home and finding out the value of your home, why use an agent? Why not go to Zillow or use tax records?
That's my answer.
Yeah, she's coughing. That's her answer, she said.
Well, I'll just speak from a realtor's perspective on that. And I chuckle because when I've been in real estate discussions and people ask about the accuracy of Zillow, you get these blow-off answers to, well, if it's accurate 50% of the time, that's okay. Well, that's not okay if you're making financial decisions. There's so much, we're just not clear where the data comes from. You need to get accurate information. Another concern I have is, especially in certain areas, where people see what homes are listed for, and they say, okay, well, that's what that home is worth. Folks, what a home is listed for may not and probably will not be what it sells for. And that can lead to some misunderstandings too. Get accurate information. You can pick up on that.
So y'all, you don't know how many times that I deal with somebody and they want to do a house, buy a house or whatever. Guess what Lori does? She looks on Zillow, she looks on the tax rolls. I ask my borrower what they think of their value is, and I call a realtor. I pull from 4 places, and then I think, okay, I've pulled from 4 places on what that home value is, and even if I do or don't have a real estate agent involved, you've got to take the messaging of that information and then put reality on it.
Yeah. So there's a joke we have. It's not very funny, but I'll tell you anyway. Do you know what the A in Zillow stands for? Accuracy. And so, but one of the big reasons why we caution around those sort of online valuation models is because Texas is a non-disclosure state. That means, unlike California or other states, what a house actually sells for is not public information. So Texas is a non-disclosure state. As real estate agents, we have access to what homes actually sold for. So when you get a Zestimate, is that what they call it, a Zestimate? That is based primarily on what a home listed for and many other factors. So just take that into account. I hope that helps a little bit. Virginia, did you want to add to that?
That's what I was going to say about the non-disclosure state. And you talk about how we're still recovering from COVID, and you mentioned that whole unicorn year, 21, 20, in there. That was such a hard time right after that, when homes sold as unicorns. It was an anomaly. It was not the real world. And the adjustment thereafter was really hard. And it's still, it's the correction, and that's what's so important. But that's the reason you need accurate information. Well, my neighbor sold theirs, and I am amazed at how many times when we list a home, and someone will say, well, now I know my neighbor sold their house for X. Well, I have access to the accurate, real information. And it's like, sorry, that's not, you don't know all the ins and outs. The gossip line, it's always wonderful what we hear. So get professional advice from the facts. And you mentioned like tax assessments. And it's always interesting because when I do a market analysis on a home, just as Vince does, we want to see what comparable homes have sold for and get a range. And then I also look to see what is the WCAD, Williamson County Appraisal District, what does that have the home listed? And sometimes it's like, yeah, that it's right in line. And other times you're going, where did that come from? And that comes up to the protest. If it's high, we're not going to protest if it's low. But when we're living in our homes, we want those appraisals to be low. When we're ready to sell, it's like, ooh, get that up there to support a higher price for my home. It's back to reality.
And let me just add on that, because I was immediately thinking, my head goes to appraisals. And you get an appraisal, you sell your house, and you get the appraisal, and you don't agree with it. Remember, and you correct me if I'm wrong, what you sell your house and that value is an opinion, but it's also market driven. So what somebody's willing to pay. So when I get an appraisal that's low or too low or something, it's the information that's fed into the machine that may be good or bad, and there's called a reconsideration of value you can do on those appraisals, but it's a human taking it and coming out and again it's what will the market bear, what will people pay versus what reality is and what you're comparing it to. So there is accurate information of what it's sold, but it is again pulling numbers of what's sold in the last 6 months around your neighborhood, and then what the market can bear and what people are willing to buy. And again, I'm not a realtor, so.
But just to clarify, what you said is so right about sometimes we get confused between appraisal as in a loan, for a loan. If someone is purchasing a house with a mortgage, there is going to be an appraisal where some third party is looking to see, is that a fair price for that house, which is completely different from WCAD, the county, so there are a lot of factors out there. And that whole part about reconsideration, when appraisals are done, it's how well do people know the area, how accurate are the comps, the comparable properties that are used to determine that price.
It's good. It's good. Anything else, Laura, before we move on? Thank you so much. And again, Q&A, we'll have that at the end, so make sure you write your questions down. So let's move on to kind of our third segment, essential tips for selling your home. So why is this an important topic, Virginia? Sort of what prompted us to want to talk about this today?
I just think sometimes we enter into, okay, I want to sell my home. Yes, no, but we don't think about all the factors. And as I mentioned earlier, you may not be selling your home right now, so you say this conversation is irrelevant. Well, it's really not, because I may be selling next year or 3 years, but there are things I can be doing or be aware of that could make it much easier when the time does come to sell my home. And that, all of our seminars are about, as we always say, educate, equip, and inspire seniors to make informed choices. Like Lori was saying, know the equity. Okay, I owe so much on my home. We think the market value would be, so that's how much, is in there. We see situations where people say, oh, I want to sell my home, and if it's the right time to sell your home for you personally, that's what you need to do. But sometimes people don't stop and think, what's the real estate market like now, as opposed to when I bought my home? And, you just be, and that's what we want to do, is create awareness.
Absolutely. Yes.
Vince, let me say one more thing. And that's kind of, and I don't want to be a doomsday, but like tariffs, or like, let's just say home insurance. Home insurance has gone up. HOA dues has gone up. Nobody's going to retract that, like, oh, it was high in this year, so I'm going to lower your HOA dues. And that just doesn't happen. Now there are fluctuations and things in the market. So when it comes to whether you're ready or not, and you guys tell me, if the time is right for you, do it, because you're hitting up against a wall of everything going up. And I've run numbers about if the cost of waiting is really all I'm going to say for that. Again, what's right for you.
That's good. That's good. So you do have a handout in your packet, Essential Tips for Selling Your Home. So if you want to pull that up, we're going to kind of go through that pretty quickly. So let's start with the records. So what are the most important documents, Virginia, that you would suggest people have?
Some people are just so amazing at keeping track throughout their life in that house of significant enhancements, upgrades. If you keep those kinds of files, that is fantastic. So that when I visit with you about selling your home, we can say, yes, what were everything from my added plantation shutters, we put a new roof on, what year. It's not so much what you paid for it, but it's the fact that you've made these enhancements. When did you last replace your HVAC, replace your air conditioner, your water heater? Have you updated your bathroom, your kitchen, whatever? If you have those kind of categories and the year, having the value, okay, that's fine. But remember, when you get ready to sell your home, it's not going to be based on, well, I paid X dollars for my home, and now I've spent another $80,000 on my home, so that's what my sales price will be. Your sales price, your list price, to be accurate, needs to be based on what the market is willing to pay, and that's why we look at comparable properties. The enhancements you've done, the plantation shutters, the whatever, those are marketing things. That's the curb appeal. That's what sets your home apart. And if we have a list of that, I know for mine, when we put a house on the market, we do a listing of upgrades and features to make sure someone noticed those special cabinets in the garage and whatever your enhancements could be. So if we have that, Also, if you have, for those of you who have like twice a year service on your HVAC or pest or whatever, just that ongoing information gives buyers confidence that your home has been well maintained. A lot of times prospective buyers want to know the utility bills just so they can plan ahead for their own budgets and also see how efficient is your heating and cooling system. So the more documentation, and if that's just maintained over time, it's a lot easier than scampering to figure out when you replace that water heater.
Yeah, good. That's good, because most every buyer will ask that question. How old is the roof? How old is the AC unit? They will, ask these things. So,
Vince, one thing when you mentioned roof too, it made me think. When you sell a home, as a seller, you complete a seller's disclosure. And it's everything you know about your home. And do you have all these systems, including do you have a plumbing system? I love it. When people come to that question, they go, those forms are used to all kinds of properties. So just bear with it. But the only thing that's interesting, the only thing they ask for an age on is the roof. It does not ask for the age of your HVAC or water softener or water heat, but it sure is helpful if we have that information, because realtors will be calling how old is, and if we have that ready to go, it's a lot easier.
yeah, that's good. Let's move on to the second point about legal documents. So talk to us about what legal documents would you suggest that we have?
One of the things that come, I guess power of attorney, who can sign for you if you were not able to sign for your house? Or if you're off in Europe and we get a contract on your house, is there somebody who, you can sign? So that's one thing. And the thing to clarify about power of attorney is that it does include real estate transactions. I often ask people, and then have the title company review the power of attorney, so we just make sure we know and not get into confusion at the end. I think one of the biggest concerns with our population here, especially if we have lost a spouse, sometimes there's misunderstanding. Yes, we are a joint property, community property state. And that's fine. We just have to have the documentation. Oh, well, my husband had a will. Everything goes to me, so it's all fine. We don't have to do anything. Sorry, you need accurate information. Probating a will is critical. And that, too, has kind of a bad rep. We don't, it takes too long. It's too expensive. Get accurate information. As we've had Rainey, and we've talked about, you might want to consider a trust. That is a really easy way to convey property. So I'm just saying, have your documents available. When I list a home, and when people say, our trust, I have the title company review the trust, not checking on it, but just so we have the right terminology and the right people are ready to sign. There's that certification page. And in some trust, both husband and wife have to sign. Others, one can sign. And I've had situations, we all face this, or there's the potential, if one spouse is having dementia, memory issues, and if one person can sign, and I know you can get into a whole discussion about guardianship, and I'm not going to get into that today, but that can come into play. But having those, and then it's back to the will. On tax records, where it says like the owner, I learned an important lesson many years ago. The woman was listed as the owner of the property. I thought we were all ready to go. But then her husband's will had never been probated, and so there was a lot of scampering at the end. That's when I learned to have it evaluated or to have the open title with the title company so they will know up front ahead of time. In that case, yes, you go through an heirship affidavit and there's paperwork to be done. sure is easier if you've planned ahead rather than doing it in the time crunch of trying to close on the sale of your house. I think those would be
Yeah,
the
I
main
think you
things.
covered it. So let's talk
Vince,
about, yes, ma'am.
Let me
Yeah,
add
absolutely.
to that.
Yes.
There's only really 4 documents from a lending standpoint. I'm going to mention the first 2, which is your deed of trust, but don't worry about it. It's filed online with the county. And your promissory note, I promise to pay. You can get a copy of it. It's important. You need to read it. But don't forget, the bank will have a copy of that too. The 2 that we run into most is your survey. Find your survey, keep a copy of it. That's the very first document that will save you and your seller, your buyer, if you can find that survey and keep a good, clean copy of it. And then the second, well, let me add 2 more. When you close a loan, there's a document, it used to be called a settlement statement or a HUD. It's now called a closing disclosure. The title company you closed with before will have that, but that sometimes you need it. But the other last thing I'll mention is if you pay off your home or there's any liens on your home, you need a release of lien on that. So let's say you have your home for forever and you pay that off. Nowadays, the bank that pays it off should file that and legally release it with the county with you. But sometimes back in the day when I worked at the bank, we just filed it to the borrower and it was the borrower's responsibility. So the title company, your real estate agent, can help you. They're going to go and research all of the records that are with your property. And if there's any old liens, any old claims to anything and it's not been researched, the title company will help you get with that. But there are documents there, and if you have questions, we could go down a rabbit hole. You can get me afterwards.
That's great. Yeah, Virginia.
So, yeah, along the lines of the survey, sometimes there are questions about that. Can I use an existing survey? I'm kind of chuckling because being with Keller Williams and our broker is one who you need to have a new survey. So, okay, I spoke her line. That's what my broker says. Fine. In the real world, we can use an existing survey. The question is because, yes, they're copyrighted and all that, but I'm just saying in practice, there's this form called a T47 that we sign, and if you've made changes to your property, not inside the house, but if you've added a fence, expanded a patio, a walkway, that can be drawn onto the survey and acknowledge that those changes were made. And then it's up to the lender and the title company if it's a valid survey.
Yeah.
So if you have your survey, it's great.
Yeah.
Virginia, if you're buying your house with cash, you still need to talk and understand the survey and what your rights and what's
Yeah,
there. So
highly
just because
recommend.
you're doing a loan, a survey is very important for cash deals.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And, sometimes surveys sort of get copied and copied. Have you seen those? And after like a while, like forms like Sideways, have you ever seen those in documents? So surveys sometimes end up like that, and they do become illegible. So it depends. The title company will evaluate it and make sure that you can use that survey. So. Virginia's having a coughing fit right now, so let's just talk amongst ourselves for a second. So the next item we want to talk about is maintenance. So when it comes to maintenance issues, what are some big ones that we need to really pay attention to, and why?
Well, we mentioned kind of in passing a while ago about like your HVAC system, your roof. It's helpful if you know the condition of things. Okay, roofs. Many of us had our roofs replaced in 2020. Some of you escaped 2020 and went back to 2013. And it's funny because 2020, we kept saying, oh, we have a new roof. It was 2020. Well, now that's 5 years ago. So that time is adding up. But things like roofs, it's helpful just to have someone assess it. And are there things that we could do to avoid issues once it's under contract? I know in our case we have a great roofer. He's not trying to sell roofs, but he's trying to help us be proactive, aware if there are some things that could be done, or be aware, your roof is 15 years old, and here in Texas, that's getting to be kind of old for a roof, and you might want to be prepared, meaning you may need a new roof. And so if we are aware of that, it can help. But, you know, your HVAC, having that serviced semi-annually, even if you don't, but I'm going to put my house on the market, it's advantageous to have it checked and serviced just so we can tell the prospective buyer that it was recently checked. We just encourage that. You know, any known issues, some of us have the squirrels that love to chew on that fascia up under the roof, and you know, it doesn't bother me. Well, it doesn't bother you as the homeowner, but when a prospective buyer sees that, they're not that impressed by it. And, you know, as we see, this may come up, well, it connects with the next point. When a buyer's going through your home and they see things that should be taken care of, it doesn't bother us, but you see their mind switch from, oh, this is a nice home, to what else is wrong with it? What aren't they taking care of? So, and some people say, I'm not going to do anything to my home. I'm going to sell it as is, and that's the way it is. That is your option. But then you have to take that into consideration when the pricing is discussed. You don't, you know, it's like, well, I want top dollar. Well, we've got a little challenge there. So we got to be aware of that.
And one quick thing, Virginia, I wanted to, about the roof and the HVAC. One thing that some sellers opt to do, which I think can be a very good idea, is they opt to get their own inspection prior to putting the house on the market. So there are no surprises. Oftentimes, you put your house on the market, you do sort of the things that kind of make it look pretty. You get an offer, and then there's this option period where they have their inspection, and then you come back and kind of renegotiate everything. And sometimes, you know, recently Virginia has a house on the buy side under contract right now in Sun City that the roof had to be replaced. It was in pretty bad shape. And so that could be a deal breaker. And as a seller, I highly recommend you not go into any transaction being completely blindsided by that, because that can kind of upend things. So that is something to consider as an option to proactively get your own inspection, so you know exactly, you could be fully prepared when a buyer comes and says, oh, I want this. You're like, yep, I knew about that. You know, it doesn't catch you off guard. But you go ahead.
Just one other deferred maintenance issue we often see, what we call failed thermal seals in the windows. When you see that cloudiness or you see droplets of moisture, does that have to be taken care of? No. But if you were buying the house, would you want to buy a house with cloudy windows, or would you want to have them taken care of? Sometimes people will say, well, I just want to repair it. There really is no repair. Now, a few years ago, there was a big deal where someone was going through town, and they would drill a little hole and suction out moisture, and it didn't work. And, you know, so it has to be replaced. I'm just using that as an example, and I'll kind of tie into the next one, Vince, about buyer's eyes. It doesn't bother me that the window next to my computer is very cloudy. Well, it really does bother me. I just don't get around to doing anything about it. But if we were going to sell our home, I would imagine that a buyer would go, get that fixed, or it could turn them off where they think there are other things with the home and not want to purchase it.
Yeah, that's good. Yes, Lori.
And I hesitate to bring this up, but solar panels. Yeah.
Oh, solar panels.
Yeah, all I'm going to do is just caution you to do your homework on that, because that is a lien on your house that when you go to transfer it, it makes it additional steps and additional headache a little bit for depending on what you do. I'm just going to caution you. I just had that happen with my dad, so just know that
if they're financed, yes, yeah, absolutely.
I have not done an interview with a solar panel company, but when you put those solar panels on, they cost $20,000. They don't put a lien like a real estate lien on there, but there's something called a UCC lien, and it muddies the water. So when you go to sell that home, you've had the solar panels on there for 4 years, you still have 5 years left to make those payments. That lien is on there, so you're going to have to pay that lien off to get it sold or do some negotiation. So there's a UCC lien, and some of these companies that do these online, like, if you go out and decide to put a pool in and you're using a lender that is not a mortgage lender, they can put other liens on those homes. And that's the thing, I guess what I'm saying is just have a side conversation with somebody that can help you understand that does affect the title and the liens that muddy. We call it muddy in the water because it's not a full-on lien.
And make sure you write those questions down. We want to get to those, but we are kind of running up against time. No, you're good. So Virginia, really quickly, importance of the buyer perspective. Do we cover that? Like when you walk through your house, again, things that you see all the time, you're like, yep, I should probably fix that. But when a buyer comes in, they just zoom right in on that one thing. So how important is that to?
The question is, if you walk through there and it's not your own home, would you buy that house today? I mean, and it's hard for us to separate that. Just some real quick thing, because I'm going to combine several of these, but is have the house clean. I mean, spotless clean. I mean, white glove clean. Ceiling fans, baseboards, cabinet tops, showers, all clean. Windows clean. See, all of that makes such a difference. Now, this is a very small thing, but making sure and having bright lights in your house. There's a balance. Why we have so many different lights now, it drives me crazy. I wouldn't want it to look like a surgical suite, which sometimes the bright lights can, but have bright light. But it's nice if they match. It's really frustrating to look up at a light fixture, or especially in the bathroom. You've got 5 lights up there, and they're 4 different colors or brightnesses.
Or one's not even working. Right.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea to have them working. And you know what? And people get so frustrated with this. On an inspection, if a light doesn't work, that's what the inspector says. And because it's not their responsibility to go twist the light and see if it will work, that if you just had it twisted because you didn't want it to come on. But so, I'm just saying those are some of the things that we really value when we're getting houses on the market is also just that whole, when we talk a lot about curb appeal.
Yeah, big deal.
If someone drives up in front of your home, how inviting is it? Just little things, having it trimmed, mowed, edged, mulch is amazing.
Amazing mulch, yes.
It is. So just those kinds of things, yeah.
Okay, great. So we have a couple more questions. And so in terms of working with a real estate professional, what should people look for? What questions should they ask?
Well, obviously, I'm going to come at it 2 ways. Someone who knows the market, knows your neighborhood. It's kind of interesting now with internet, and you can put in stuff, and people from Austin will say, oh, yeah, I'll come sell your home in Georgetown. I would really want to be careful of that. Do they really know? And, it's both just knowing the market, but also collaborating with other realtors. Like in Sun City, we have a Sun City Realtors Tour. We're the host, the 4th Thursday of each month. It's a great time if your home is on the market in Sun City to get it out there. Not everybody is aware of that. And so, but the most important thing in choosing a realtor is not who has the most signs out in your neighborhood or, it's who do you have confidence in, you, not necessarily what your neighbor said, but who do you feel comfortable working with? Their knowledge. Do they care about you can you have an open communication? You know, as realtors, when we go on listing appointments and we know that the prospective seller's kind of sizing us up to see if we're the realtor they would want to work with, we're kind of sizing up.
Yes, we size
You
clients
know,
up too.
there,
Yes.
and Vince and I have gone on some appointments together where we walked out and we kind of thought maybe that wasn't going to be a good match for us for a variety of reasons. So,
We're
like,
getting some good laughs in the front row here. I love
I
this.
didn't say that. No. Anyway, so I'm just saying it works both ways. You know, having a relationship, but I'm amazed when someone would call me and say, but I don't see as many signs. I see all these signs for somebody. Well, that's fine. Can you have a strong relationship with them?
Yeah, that's good. And then when you talk about having a coordinated approach to selling real estate in a team, what does that look like and why is that important?
I think this is so critical. At this stage in our lives, selling this home is different than our other sales before, different from our other moves before. We often talk about previously, for one thing, many of our moves were through Relo or a business, and we didn't have to do much of anything. And even if you did, most everything from house A went to house B. That's not going to happen now. Most of us are going to a smaller space, so we can't take everything with us, and we need guidance and support in that. Along those lines, you hear me say this a lot, but it's critical. Yes, you know, when I think how many times I've moved, we did move 5 years ago, so that was a short time, but before that it had been 20 years. And my back worked better, my knees worked better, I had more energy, and I could do it more. So I'm just saying, you've got to assess where we are. But there's so much more than just selling your home. And back on our Seniors Living Smarter Services table, we have one of our variations on the puzzle there. But there's what we call the move part, move management. I just think it's critical to have a team. You all have heard people before in our seminars to present about how move managers can help you make the move, sort, organize, unpack you, and you walk into your new place all set up. So, yeah, you can go do that on your own. When we talk about one-stop shop on our team, just because I've made that commitment, we have the group who will do the move management for you. In fact, Maureen was on our panel back last November. You heard her speak about using the move managers that helped on their move down to the Austin area. So that's one part of it. But then we've got the stuff that's left. What's going to happen with the stuff in your home? Donations, whatever. Usually we're going to do some type of liquidation. You've heard me say we oversell the idea of estate sales. An estate sale may work for you if you have the right quantity and quality of stuff. If not, there may be other more appropriate strategies to get rid of what you no longer need. But that's where you need a professional who can guide that. Getting your house ready for the market. In our case, we have a property prep person. We work together. What needs to be done? With your approval, what are we going to do? But the more coordinated that is, we can shorten the time and reduce the stress. Now, I could just say, okay, I'll sell your home, you go figure out all the other stuff. But that's a lot of other stuff to figure out. And I think it's advantageous, just be clear. And time-wise, I've seen people get in jams. Oh, here's the big question. When's the best time to move, besides when it's right for you? But getting down to the question, do I move first or sell my home first? It depends. But generally, and I get scared when I say this because I know there are implications. This stage in our lives, I strongly recommend strong consideration to going ahead and moving and then putting your house on the market. And some of you are going, oh, but then I got to pay for my new place and my exit. Yep, you do. But it's reducing the stress to you. If you are trying to downsize and get rid of half of the stuff in your house and anticipate a move. And can I show your house in 30 minutes? It can drive you crazy. So we just try strong recommendation. You move, and it's like, oh, but you talked about how many days on the market. Yes, you need to be aware of that when you make these decisions. But the better condition we have our house in, the better we have it priced in terms of what we anticipate the market is paying. Let's get it on the market and get it under contract so you can go back to living in your house and not camping out there while you're waiting for it to be shown. So
That's good. So to summarize the very end part, really look for an agent that has sort of an end-to-end solution, kind of an all-in-one-stop shop
easier.
to really offer you all the liquidation, the move management, the make ready, the property prep, all these things sort of, it really supports and helps you. So anything else before we go to Q&A? Yes.
I'll just say one thing is I make decisions very quickly. My husband likes to talk about it and put it on the shelf, get it back off of the shelf and talk about it and put it back on the shelf. So I am proud that I'm a part of this group because I'm just going to encourage people to make those relationships and start those relationships now, because depending on how you balance each other out and whether you're a shelf person or an immediate person, develop those relationships with people you trust in all aspects of your environment.
So great. Thank you. Thank you for that, Lori. So before we go to Q&A, a couple quick housekeeping things. Again, you have this bright green feedback form. Please fill that out. We do review those. We look at those together. We always want to know your feedback. And there's some, on the back of this, some boxes you can check on to be contacted about things. We can also register you for our June 19th seminar, which is on memory loss. When and how to ask for help, and that's going to be a great seminar. So make sure you fill that out. Take that, and there's a basket on the table there. Put that in your basket. Also, there's another white page in your packet. The panelists today, and also you have action steps at the bottom of that. So make sure you take a look at that. We want this to be of value to you. And
Vince, one
yes.
thing, when you were talking about the June seminar, we usually meet the second Thursday, and for people who get locked into, it's the second Thursday, it's Seniors Living Smarter Seminar Day. It's fantastic, except in the month of June. You're welcome to come the second Thursday, and I bet First Methodist will be delighted to have you help with Vacation Bible School. So you might want to skip
Yes,
the second Thursday and come the third Thursday.
Yes. Yeah, we can grab coffee or something. I don't know. So, and then also, as Virginia said, she and I were in Reno last week. There's about 20 of us from across the country in this mastermind group that put on seminars, and it was a great opportunity. And I have to say, hands down, we have amazing education partners. And I see at the beginning, many of you taking advantage of that. So I always encourage you afterwards to get to know them. They're amazing people. And while you may not need that specific service right now, you might, or you might know someone who does. So please take full advantage of that. And can I have a mic runner over here, please? Someone, one of our EPs. And then, so any questions about anything that we have talked about, you can raise your hand there, and thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, Laura, you mentioned in terms of survey and selling the house for cash, and my question relates to both of them. We get probably once a month someone saying, I'll buy your house for cash as is, and we don't ever talk to them, so I didn't know what to think about those offers. And the second thing is, you said you always have to have your survey if you are going to sell it for cash. If your survey that you have has an anomaly, as in a neighbor has their fence a few inches onto your property, should that be fixed before, or?
Well, I will say this, is back in the day, you have a lot of those people that are going to try to sell their house without a real estate investor, or without a real estate agent involved or whatever. And when I say cash, I do mean that it's a cash transaction and there's no loan involved. But Virginia's taken more hours of teaching to get her certificate to be a real estate agent than I did for a lender. That should tell you something. I'm handling the money part of the transaction, and I am lending the money and underwriting your credit, and she had to take more hours for that. And so, and I don't even remember what it is, and they have to have more I have to have continual education too, but there's a lot of information, and I think, yeah, you can entertain those, but I think you need to get somebody that's trusted with it, and talk to somebody about those transactions on that.
Title.
I think that there's something to clarify too, and you did clarify, but clarify again. You know, when you get an offer to buy your home, it may involve financing or it may involve cash. Just an individual who's buying your home and they're paying cash for it. You will also get mailings about, let us buy your home for cash. Those are
Scams.
Bogus.
Sorry, that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of phishing of things out there, and that's what I'm saying is yes, reach out to somebody.
That's the best response. Oh, that one where the fence.
Here's my other opinion on it: is bring me the title company, the survey, and we can get one of our title agents to look at it. Because at the point that you're going to buy a home, ask for that survey and see how old it is, because that's your chance to maybe negotiate to get a free one from the person that's selling. So, but you can, in Texas, handwrite some of that stuff in. So I'd hate to caution you without actually seeing it and seeing what it is and how old, because just because you built a fence, that's no big deal. But there may be other things with that survey, other changes, the date, the readability. Do you see what I'm saying? So I don't want to comment on one. Bring it up, and where I would do is go to a title agent and a real estate agent and have them look at it. But if you are negotiating and you're buying, ask for that survey and see how clean it is, because you're going to sell one day and you're going to need to get one. And then be responsible for the cost of that.
Great answer. It also, depends on the type of encroachment, and we would, the title company would be able to look at that, and if it depends on the title commitment might have an exception in it. So there's a lot around involved in that. So definitely find someone that a trusted resource, and in your specific situation can help walk you through that. Right here.
Okay, I have a situation with a backyard full of trees. You know what that means. No sod, okay? I have part of it rocked in, and the rest of it is just dirt, which when it rains, it becomes mud. Now, I personally feel like before I put the house on the market, I should put out some big concrete squares with some little rocks in it or something to kind of cover part of that up. And then I think, well, maybe they won't like that, and they want to do their own thing. So what's your opinion about what makes the house really ugly, or what should I do to make it look pretty in the back?
And you can say that about the yard. You can also say that about carpet or replacing it. That's a good question. I think appearance is critical, and the point that you raised is, okay, I might like that, but is the next person going to want that? So I think you have to look at the expenditure and what's the best way to handle it. But we want it to be usable. Somebody might want to come in and do a complete xeriscaping, or 80% or whatever is allowed in the area. How to have it usable, though?
Yeah, I think too, our favorite phrase is, it depends, right? And what is important to have someone have a fresh set of eyes, right? So someone, you think, hey, I may be looking in the next 2 to 3 months to sell. Let me connect with someone, a real estate agent, and have them come over. And a good real estate agent will kindly tell you, oh, this you may want to take, may want to address this, or because I think you just said you thought it was ugly, and somebody could come in and say, well, it's not that bad. Throw some rock down here. I do know that a backyard full of mud is a lot less appealing than a backyard full of rock and big pavers. So, but I guess it depends, and I think that's when you would need, again, another trusted resource to give you options to help walk through that with you.
Yeah, I realize that it doesn't increase the value of the home. It's just to make it more appealing, really.
It actually could decrease the value, because a buyer could come in and say, I'm gonna have to sink in so much money to, I've got dogs. I don't want my dogs running around, so it could impact the value, the resale value.
Thank you.
I think one thing to be very aware of would be trees and shrubbery against the house and especially against the roof. Vince alluded to a situation we have ongoing right now where the trees have really done a number on the shingles. And it's being replaced. It was an old roof anyway. But, if you look up, there's supposed to be a 4-foot clearance between, even on the sides of the house. I know we plant stuff so close to houses and it grows up, and that's problematic too, but especially roofs. So, that's one of the things that's often advantageous to take care of it before you put it on the market.
Vince, the only thing I'll say is once you do list, be open to feedback, because the realtor that lists your house is going to have other agents in the house, and be open to changes. You list one way, but then you decide later because it's not moving, you lower the price, you fix that backyard, you do whatever. Just be open, because you've lived there for a long time and you forget, but just be open to other feedback.
Yeah, that's great. Yes, ma'am. Oh, sorry, back here. And then you're next.
Okay, you have a 20-year-old house, and so you know that designs have changed, ideas have changed, and you can't second guess what a buyer's going to want. Shouldn't you kind of be prepared to, in your mind, evaluate the costs of making changes and be prepared to offer a discount in a discussion period?
I had a hard time understanding part of that, but I think, John, the point that I sort of pick up on that is, okay, some of us have a 20-year-old house and we've made a lot of updates. We have the contemporary kitchen, the contemporary bathroom. When we look at comps, that's going to show, it would be priced here. Some of us who've not made those updates to our house, and I really would not encourage someone to go in and update a house to sell it. That's generally not a good investment. But didn't we price it accordingly? Do you see what I'm saying? You could pick up on that too, Ben.
Yes, definitely. Considering what your ROI, your return on investment is I think it's what you're saying. Like, do I really need to go in and completely remodel my kitchen for $40,000? Am I going to see a return on that? Or say, I'm going to price accordingly and allow for the fact that I have Formica countertops. I don't know, so times have changed. You're exactly right. Another thing to remember in communities like Sun City, unlike other neighborhoods, so when we do comps in regular neighborhoods, where we put a pin where your house is, and we do a radius of, if you have a single story, we would do comps on single stories, 20% plus or minus the same square footage of your house, and try to get like properties. In Sun City, it's unique because most often you're running comps against the same floor plan, right? So, and so if you have the Lavaca floor plan, then you're going to kind of compare in that sense. So that's a little change too. But you're exactly right. Is that you definitely have to, and again, that's when someone who does this for a business and knows the business to come in and give you and say, no, I wouldn't suggest that. Yes, fix the muddy backyard, but maybe don't redo your bathroom or the kitchen right now. So that ROI is very important.
Along those lines, that's true. If you're planning ahead, someone said, well, I'm planning to be here for another 3 years or 5 years. I may want to make some of those enhancements so I get to enjoy them myself, and then that can impact the sale.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm still confused about survey. Interior, exterior. So the survey is the footprint of the whole exterior, because we have added on to our living room, which makes more square footage of the house. It doesn't show up on our assessment that we get from the county every year. Then we added on a patio, which is also attached to the house. For some reason, that shows up on the assessment, but the extra 80 square feet does not. I'm assuming we're going to need a new survey. Is this true?
It
I
depends.
didn't hear what you said at the end, Maureen.
I'm assuming that we're going to need a new survey because of the addition to the house itself in addition to the patio, which is part of the house.
The first part that you enclosed a patio and made that part of your living area, okay?
Correct.
And so then it's interesting because sometimes it shows up on tax assessment and sometimes they do not. If it's heated and cooled, then that does add to the total square footage of the home. If we've just, an existing patio, but I made it a four-season room, it's not heated and cooled, it really doesn't add to the square footage of the home. So, surveys run around $450 now, I think. If
I probably wouldn't bother till you got ready to list or buy or sell, because
I'm ready.
because when a lender
going to be working on it.
whoever's going to buy your home and the price that they do and the square footage and the comps are all based on square footage. So when you get to that point and they're doing research on the square footage, you're usually going to find any errors and correct it if there is one or anything too. So
And along those lines, some people have said, well, we enclosed our sunroom. It is heated and cooled, so it's affected the total square footage of the house. And so if you want that reflected like in the MLS, we can't just say, okay, it was a 10 by 20 area we enclosed, so we're going to add that square footage. It has to be documented, and the way we do that is with an appraiser to come out and do that whole square footage. Is it necessary? Probably not. And like Vince was saying, especially in Sun City, which her home is, we're looking more at floor plans, and yes, there's variation, when we've included a patio, but they're not, we don't look as much per square foot as some cases. And just wait and see what happens.
Also, I just want to add, this is not a question, this is just a comment about team coordination, because I've been in the process now for close to a year. Remember stubborn old lady? Or maybe you still think of that, your mom, your dad, maybe you, me for sure. Stubborn old lady, we're smart, this is not our first rodeo, so we can do it ourselves. That is not a good idea. I finally realized that having a team to coordinate everything from the beginning to like downsizing and ideas of, everything. Just ideas from somebody else who's a professional, who's smarter than I am. So my new paradigm, my new word is micromanagement. I'm a mistress at micromanagement. And to be able to hand it over to my team, and this is part of my team sitting up here, has been wonderful. Right now I have an estate sale cooking. It's going to be in June, and I'm micromanaging that. And by sending pictures with texts to the estate sale person, and she's as kind as Virginia has been. So hurrah for team management.
Those of you who were here in November when Maureen spoke, at that time, she had moved, and then they had been leasing, so there's been a time gap before the house will go on the market. But when she talked about letting people help, move managers in particular, that was the focus at that time. The move managers, remember, are the people who can help with the packing, sorting, floor planning, getting you set up in your new place. We had the move managers. I don't think you shared this publicly, so I think it's okay. They first met with you, and she was all on board. It sounded absolutely wonderful. And then they gave her the estimate, and she And she did, yes, she recovered. It was not that bad. It was just surprising. But, okay, well, thank you. It wasn't very long before she called and said, reconsidered, I need that assistance. And that was the point you were, an indirect point that you were making. I know we.
And I'd just like to say that it was like half of what they quoted. So, heart attack recovered.
All righty. Well, thank you all. We have come to the end of our time together. If you have more questions, we are available and here. Please, I'll give a couple seconds for our education partners to get back to their tables. Stop by, say hi to them. Hope you have an amazing day. Make sure you turn in your name tags. There's a basket there on the table and your green feedback forms. Thank you so much, okay? Have a good day.